Hello everybody, this is Diane. I'm here to do a flip through of these sweet little traveler's notebook style journals. I would call them, they have a shabby chic feel with lots of pink and mint and roses. And I did use several pieces of my gorgeous bohemian fabric pieces and the gorgeous trims that I just got from a couple of sources. I did a video recently showing the really beautiful trims that I recently got. So I did use some of those pieces in these journals, which made me very happy to be able to do that. Before we get into them, let me just show you that this is the paper pad that the cover came from, only the cover as far as pages. Rose Cottage from Recollections, and it's one of their hot buys, and I don't know if you can still find it. I've had this for quite a while, and there were a lot of pages of cut aparts with tags and ephemera, so I used some of that also. And I used a digital kit from TLC Creates Vintage, and I will link that kit in the description box below. I will also link Boho Tree and their Etsy shop, and I will link Sheila Gingrich's Facebook page. That's where she lists her really beautiful trims, and her Facebook page is called Boho Daydreams. So I will link all of those things below. Also, as far as ephemera goes, cigarette cards with roses and ladies, and any vintage looking receipts and things like that, those are digitals from my shop, which my shop is always linked below. So let's just start with this one. These elements were cut from the cut apart pages, and this one says Cherish the Moment. I tied it with this pretty mint bias tape, seam binding. I'll get it. It's a beautiful pink cardstock, patterned cardstock with these beautiful roses, and then the back looks like lace. This was all one sheet of paper. I took this silk fabric that had these puckered parts, and I just put that on the fold so that the fold won't crack and come apart. And it's cut not very straight, but that's how I wanted it. I wanted it to look a little rough. And then I sewed it in with a 5-hole pamphlet stitch. This is one of the beautiful trims from Sheila, Boho Daydreams. And on the inside is a pocket that I made with some vintage wallpaper. I glued this piece of wallpaper to a scrap piece of file folder, so it's very sturdy. And I added some lace in this little lace medallion. And on the top of the page, I just glued this piece of sari fabric with some sequins and little jewels. That's been in my stash. I still have quite a few boho pieces in my stash. And this is one of my ephemera pieces. And to make these look a little bit old, I printed them on thin paper, and then I just did some inking, and I roughed the edges just slightly, just to soften them a little bit. There's a razor in here, and that's what I used to do that. You could also just use the edge of a scissor blade. I don't trust myself with that, or a razor blade that you have. So I just wanted the edge to be a little softer and not quite so crisp and new looking. So I did that on all of the pieces that I printed of my ephemera. This is one of the digital pages, and there are beautiful flowers on these pages also, but there are also pages that just have some text on them or not the color. It's a good combination. This is some really vintage wallpaper, really pretty. And then I just paper clipped on here a vintage photo of a couple. I think it's a really cute photo, and this little stamp. And there are lined pages on the backs of all of these pages. On this page, I paper clipped a little vintage gift card. It is the sweetest little thing with an elephant and a green hat and some pink daisies. It opens up, you could journal in there, and I included the little envelope. Very vintage. And I just put that on there like that and then clipped it to the page. This is very pale looking. I think it's an avocado dyed paper, but it's very pale pink. It's a pretty paper there. This is one of the pages from the kit from TLC Creates Vintage. Here's one of the trim pieces from Sheila. And this is also from Sheila. I think most of the pieces, I know most of the pieces are from Sheila. There might just be a couple little snippets from the boho tree pieces. This is part of the digital, or not digital, the paper pad, one of the cut aparts. This is a digital tag that I've had in my stash, and this is just a tag that I made with my Cricut. Some ledger paper with a cutout piece from the paper kit. This is a printer paper with roses on it, very faint roses, so you can write on it, and then there's a darker border. This is a really pretty vintage wrapping paper. I love this one. Piece of stationery. Now, I think this must be the one where the printer pulled the paper out crooked, so it looks crooked in here, and then there was white showing on the edges of the other side. So I did that on a video where I covered that with something. This sorry fabric frays quite a bit, so you know, when it bothers you, just trim it off. That's a piece of vintage stationery. This is typing paper here, vintage typing paper, and there's a little piece of sari. I think it's the same as that one, just a different piece cut off it. Pretty envelope, and this is one of my digitals. This digital kit would be one of the vintage book covers and pages sets. The other side of the stationery, and I just sewed some lace, just a random piece of lace on the edge. Okay, this is where the white was showing on the printed paper, so I put this strip of paper here, and then there was a little bit of white showing down here. So I just glued this piece of jeweled sari on it and put in a couple of the pieces from the paper pad. There's a piece of sari fabric up here, sewn on as a tab. I zigzagged all the way around it so that it wouldn't fray so much. And here we have a vintage envelope. This is dated 1941. The back of it was messed up because it was glued into a scrapbook, so it peeled off some of the pulpy scrapbook page. So I covered that up with part of a 1960 letter and vintage wallpaper, and inside is one of the cut apart pieces from the paper pad, and this is also from the paper pad, a really pretty tag, and it's just clipped here all together. And here's another piece from the paper pad, and this library card is from the paper pad, and this is one of my printable rose cigarette cards that I just paper clipped there. This is a piece of fabric which was cut in the shape of a grandmother's a fan quilt pattern, petal shape. I've got stacks of them, so I just wrapped it around that page. And then this is part of a little baby garment. It was some sort of a cuff, whether it was the arm or the leg. I kind of think it was the leg, but I don't know. And it has a little tiny baby button right there. So I had this piece that had 3 buttons on it, so I was able to cut that into 3 pieces for these 3 journals. So every journal gets a little baby button on that little piece of a garment. And on the last page, there is a glassine bag, which I decorated a little bit with some lace. This is a piece of the boho tree trim that I bought, and this piece, and then I put in a alteration tag, and I did some collaging on it, and put some sari trim in it. And then there's one of my digital pieces tucked in there. And on the inside cover is a square doily. I cut a corner out of that square doily and glued it to this green. It's a vintage cardstock piece. It was actually the cover of a book. It was a, flexible cardstock cover. And I glued on this silk embroidery ribbon with this little circle cut from the paper pad. And this is a digital check from one of my kits. I think that the kits, all of my digitals, the receipt type of ones and the check, they were from the newest set that I just added. I just added it last night so that you'd be able to access it after you see these journals. And there are 2 sets, and it's vintage letterhead receipts. So let's cherish the moment. This one doesn't have a quote in there, so you can put your own title in there. Again, it's got the mint seam binding, a very beautiful pale mint cover with some roses. A piece of sari fabric. It's kind of got some shimmer to it, and I just wrapped it around and glued it on. It did have a sort of a pattern, so a very pale purpley type of flowers, I think, was on it. So it's not a stain there, it's a pattern. A piece of a very sheer peach colored fabric, and this is from Boho Tree. Love that. And there's some eyelet fabric sewn to the fold, and just a little scrap of fabric there to add a little something extra. So it's got the same sort of element, so I'll go through it a lot faster. This is the photograph that's in this one with a little green stamp. And here is the little vintage gift card. So pretty. Again, piece of trim up there. This is one of Sheila's. I made a pocket out of that. Each of these embroidered trim pockets has a tag piece from the paper pad, one of my Cricut cut tags, and a digital tag. I've got a whole bunch of digital tags printed out, so I figured I'd better start using them. This is from the paper pad. Wrapping paper. And this is from one of my kits. The book covers and pages kits. Book covers and illustrations, maybe that's what it is. Typing paper here, and some stationery with lace. Again, a vintage letter. This was torn here, so this is genuine vintage cellophane tape, and this is dated 1946. So I just glued the tape down, and then I put this piece of coffee dyed paper around this edge because that was split right here. And I did a collage on the back because, again, it was messed up from the scrapbook that it was glued into. It's just got a little piece of coffee dyed scrapbook paper in there and a little cutout from the paper pad. There's a little baby button. Again, we have the glassine bag that I decorated. This is from Boho Tree, one of my digitals. And a collaged tag. This is one of my cigarette cards. And in the back, it's got the same sort of pocket and another. This is an order for sugar and 2 bags of seed from Jacob Biles from 1879. I didn't realize that this said Elmira, 2 bags of seed, Elmira. This was written to the Lehigh Valley Railroad Company. So he worked for the railroad company because I believe I have one of his paychecks. So this, the 1 something of sugar is Philadelphia, and this is Elmira. That's very close to where I live, Elmira, New York, even though I live in Pennsylvania. I live closer to Elmira, New York than I do to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And then lastly, we have Enjoy the Little Things. And it's got this gorgeous trim on there from Sheila. It's got the same trim that's wrapped around the side, but this is more like an edge piece that has some gold threads woven in there, so it was like the border part. It's got a floral fabric on the spine, and it's got flowers all the way across on this page. Here's the photo I put in here. It's our red-headed lady with a dachshund. I think it's a dachshund. It's a little dog anyway. And I know she's a redhead because I got a whole bunch of pictures from her. My friend gave them to me. We don't know who she is, but she had red hair in the color photos. I guess I turned this sideways so it wouldn't cover her face or her dog's face. There are a lot of pictures with her, of her with her dog. Some of them are Irish setter, red setter. Oh, sorry. This is a gorgeous little card, a little gift card. It says a little remembrance, and it's got these really pretty geraniums, but the paper itself has a sheen to it. Almost looks like moire fabric. There's little pots of geraniums. It's just so cute. I figured it was about time I get out my vintage stuff and actually use it. This is a beautiful trim from Sheila. She puts fabric or trim bundles together when she can, and does a video on her YouTube channel and talks about them on her Facebook page. They sell out pretty fast. This is a really pretty piece of very sheer fabric with some embroidery on it. I had glued this envelope shut, so I didn't put that tag back inside until it dried. A piece of lace there. This is gift wrap. I don't think I mentioned that on the first pass through on the front side of it, but it's almost like a kind of a glossy tissue paper. So pretty. And the final vintage letter is 1910, so it's the oldest one. It does have some cracks on this edge. It was opened, slid open on this side. I really have no idea what a gall cure collar is. The cut shows gall cure curled hair collar face. I don't know what any of that means. Is it for gallbladder? I don't know. And I didn't research it. South Hammond, New York. There's just a piece of scrapbook paper in there and a journal card from the paper pad. And a little baby button. I love these pink receipts. Of course I do. You knew I would. And there's a snippet from Boho Tree. Same one that's on that. This is, oh no, that's not one. This is mulberry paper. One of these tags has a very old and crumpled up piece of wax paper from a big wax paper bag that was in a box of stuff I got at a flea market. And there's another check in that pocket. And that is the last little journal. Now these measure 4.5 inches wide. So if you're hoping to put them in a traveler's notebook cover, I don't know if that will fit. I think it's a little bit wide. And it's 8, let me see to make sure, 8 1/4 tall and 4.5 wide. We have enjoy the little things, cherish the moment, and I'm just going to call this mint green TN notebook. So these are in my shop when you see this video, and so I'd really appreciate it if you go over, take a look at what else is there, and do a little shopping. I really appreciate you guys and your comments on my videos, and your really good, well, you just are really great customers to my shop, and I really appreciate it. And even if you're not a customer of my shop and you just enjoy my videos, that's great. I appreciate every single one of you too. And so that's it for today, and I will see you in the next video. Have a creative day today. Bye-bye.